There they are. See that worm? Hello, sir. Hello. Hello, and welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather, and we have 9 pregnant does right now. So the one who is the most pregnant, or the most heavily pregnant, is due in about 2 weeks, which is super exciting. And then I have some that aren't due until mid-March, but I can tell without pregnancy testing them that everybody is bred. So the topic of today's video is twofold. I'm going to show you how I can tell my girls are bred without a pregnancy test. And a little bit earlier, I did a fecal test on one of my does and found some pretty interesting things in her poop. So we'll go over all of that after we talk about these pregnant girls. So Svenli here is the one that is due March 4th. She actually has a very deep body. So normally the kids really sit heavily on the right side of the goat. The saying goes, lunch on the left, rugrats on the right. And that's referring to the right side of the goat, not while you're looking at her face, but her right side. So usually, depending on the doe and her depth, you can start to see that side of her body poking out more than normal. And most of what I'm going to talk about today is a lot easier to tell if you are used to seeing your does for a long time. If you've just bought a goat and you don't really know what she looks like on a regular basis, it's going to be a lot harder for you to tell the difference in her body. But it's still not impossible. And Calamity needs attention. Don't chew it off. Oh man, I thought you were just zippering it. Usually with a first-time freshener, from my experience, which isn't very long, I've only been keeping goats 3 years, but I've noticed that they will start to put their udder on a little bit earlier than some of my girls who have kidded before. A little earlier than they will start filling up their milk bag. So once the goat has already had babies, their udder doesn't ever deflate back up towards their body and turn into nothing like you usually see on a doe that hasn't had babies before. It just deflates pretty heavily, and it can remain pretty deflated really right up until sometimes a week right before kidding. You won't see any milk coming into the udder. Actually, the latest that I have seen a doe start to fill her udder is about 2 weeks before kidding. Usually they'll start filling that out within about 6 weeks of kidding. But those first fresheners, they usually will start putting that udder on sometimes 3 months before they have their babies. And I'm experiencing that now. Some of my girls that aren't due until mid-May are starting to bloom their first, the cutest little first freshener udders, and we're gonna try to get a look at some of those. Hello. Yes, Calamity, you need attention. I know. Can we see yours? Can we see yours? So if you have your hands on your goats often, you can feel when that change starts to happen. Usually with a first freshener before they get pregnant, they are just, you know, 2 teats hanging down with maybe a tiny little fat pad right above where the teats are, where her new udder will be. And as her pregnancy progresses, you'll start to notice that that starts to develop a little bit more, that starts to fill out a little bit more. With Talia here, her teats really started to elongate. They started to even swell up and widen up, and I can feel that she is starting to get a lot of mammary tissue coming on, and that's gonna just keep developing as her pregnancy progresses. One of the first things that I notice just in looking at my first fresheners is they all have hair on their udders, because I don't shave udders here, and you usually won't shave udders until they're close to giving birth anyway if you do shave udders. But when they start developing their mammary tissue, the hair on the udder usually kind of lays flat like this, but because there is a swelling happening there, the hair sort of starts to stick out, and you can visually see that. Instead of having to touch, you can see that happening. And Elpis started doing that, you guys. See how the hair on her udder is kind of sticking straight out? She's getting that new baby udder coming on. Elpis is a little bit leery of me because I have been touching her cute little brand new udder a lot, and I'm starting to annoy her. So I'm gonna try to leave her alone, but it's adorable. It's definitely there. Excuse me, Mama. Excuse me. Another visual change that you'll see in your goats as their pregnancy progresses is their lady bits or their vulva will look different. It'll look more swollen, more full, more jiggly. There's just a lot more blood flow headed to that area, a lot more fluids headed to that area, and everything looks just a lot more poochy and puffy than it normally does. Mayhem here is not bred, and this is her daughter Boba, who is bred. Boba's is just a lot more puffy. Good girl. My favorite way to tell that my does are bred happens around the 3 to 3.5 mark of their 5-month pregnancy, and that's when you can start to feel the babies kicking from the outside. It is really, really awesome to feel, but can be kind of difficult. So remember, it's lunch on the left, Rugrats on the right. This is where we're going to be able to feel the babies kicking. There are probably babies on this side, since does do have a bicornate uterus. There's a uterine horn here and a uterine horn here. Problem with this side is the rumen and the digestive system is so big that it gets in the way, and you can confuse. Pesky, what did that feeder do to you? Pesky, goodness. You're gonna break my bone. Hey, stop. What did it ever do to you? The hay is outside. So the rumen can get in the way, and any kind of movement that you feel on this side is probably a result of digestion. The rumen is really large and it moves in really crazy ways. So you want to try to feel for the babies in front of the udder, but closer towards the left side of the goat. Right about here is where you're gonna feel some good kicks. There they are. It is so amazing to feel that. So, if you have never been pregnant yourself and you don't know what it feels like to feel a baby from the outside of yourself or someone you know, put your hand on your cheek, right like this, and move your tongue around on the inside of your mouth. That's what it's like. That's what you're looking for. It could feel like a little kick, like if you punched your cheek with your tongue, or you can feel these rolling motions, but it's definitely different than digestion. You can feel the rumen on one side and then try to feel babies on the other side and try to feel the difference. It's so amazing. One of the reasons I'm so excited is Christine was a really hard breed this year. It took me 5 different cycles of introducing her to the buck in order for her to settle. I don't know what her issue was this year. She's been really hard to breed in the past, but we do have more Christine babies coming in. I'm ordering another Swiss with some wattles. Okay? She's done with food, so she's done with me. Are you over it? We want more wattles, okay? We want more wattles. We do. Did you take out all your frustrations on that wall? Yeah. So those are just the ways that I know that my does are pregnant. That, and of course they don't come back into a heat. But with the breeds like La Manchas that don't cycle year round, sometimes towards the end of the season, which can be around December, January, it's a little bit hard to know if they're just done cycling because the end of the season, or they're done cycling because they're bred. So that's a little bit tough. It is really hard to wait 3 months in order to feel the babies on the outside, and then you know you're good. So a lot of people will do the blood tests. I just don't find that it's super economical for me to do that. I try just to keep a close eye on my herd and watch for heat cycles and other signs of pregnancy. But I have been burned in the past. When I thought a doe was bred, I thought I saw udder development and I thought I felt babies. So this was last year. It was s'mores, and she did end up bleeding right around the time I expected her to deliver, but she never actually kidded. And when I took her to the vet said that she miscarried, but I never found a baby. I don't know really what happened with S'mores, but I did rehome her with a friend that is willing to work with S'mores and possibly getting rid of any cysts that she might have. And hopefully there'll be some S'mores babies at some point this year. And I am in great contact with the new owner of S'mores, so I'll be able to fill you guys in on exactly what happened there. That was a weird situation that I don't exactly have the headspace or experience to try to remedy, so I gave her to my friend. They also make these really cool, it's almost a Doppler, but it's like a device that you can use on goats and pigs and probably other animals to detect amniotic fluid. And they're a little bit expensive. They're still beyond what I think is worth it for me to have, just to know that my girls are bred. But it seems pretty neat. You just hold it where the babies should be forming, and if you get like a certain series of beeps, that means that the detector is detecting the amniotic fluid, which is only going to be there if she has kids, in theory. I have had a doe have a hydromeda pregnancy where all she was pregnant with was fluid. And that was heartbreaking because she did do all of the things. She had all the hormones, she had a nice big belly, and she did produce milk. It's just one day she was skinny with no babies, no signs of having kidded. Her back end was not, you know, it didn't look like she had had babies at all. It's because she didn't. She just basically had a water bag pop, and that was it. That was a weird situation. And there are people who will either pay a vet for an ultrasound, or there's people that will run around and give livestock ultrasounds. They're pretty expensive, but with that you can see exactly how many babies that you should be expecting, and that's kind of nice to know sometimes. But again, that's just something that's beyond, I think, most at-home dairy producers. I think that's too expensive for a lot of us to really justify, so I don't. March 4th, Shveni is going to be giving birth. March 5th, Tempest is going to have her first freshen. March 17th, Margie is going to give birth. Ooh, be nice, Pepper. And then March 31st is Christine. Calamity is due last. Calamity just wants her own show so badly, but you're the last one. You are the last one. Can we see your baby udder? Calamity just started putting on a little bit of mammary tissue in the back, but she hates it when I touch it. Tally, 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 come here. Thank you. Thank you. Talia is much better about it. Come here. Come here. Tally. Tally, what's back there, Tally? What is that? What is that? Good girl. Christine here, she is the one that I collected poo pellets from yesterday, and I did put them in the refrigerator until I was able to look at them today. And this is the first time that I have ever done my own fecals. I probably did not do it completely perfectly, but I want to practice before I have a situation where I really need to be figuring out what's wrong with my sick goat. So I think it went really well. I did find some interesting things, so let me just show you. Hey guys, so ignore my messy desk. I am just now learning how to do my own fecals on my goats, and I have something to show you. So let me get my screen recording going so I can give you a up close and personal view at this worm. See that worm? So I just did my first ever fecal on one of my goats, Christine. She was actually the goat that had the most issues for me last year as far as worm load goes on a consistent basis. I was deworming her every 2 to 3 months, which is a lot. I would really love to not do that, and I have a sneaking suspicion not only do I need to work on some management things to help my goats through their worm loads, but I also really want to be able to deworm worm with intention. I don't just want to take shots in the dark. I want to see exactly what my girls are dealing with so I know exactly what dewormer to give them. And when I give the dewormer, I can then follow up 10 to 14 days later and make sure that my dewormer is in fact working. So Christine did have a dewormer last month. It was in January. This doesn't hurt my feelings at all. This is literally the only worm on the McMaster's slide at all. And I only saw 2 eggs at all. So I gave her ivermectin in January simply because of her FAMACHA score, and it seems like she really doesn't have a worm load to speak of at all. They're going to carry some level of worms pretty much all the time. It's just how well their bodies are able to manage it and for how long. So this is the one worm that I saw on the slide, and I did find a couple eggs. So let me find those real quick. So the bigger bubbles that you see on the screen, or the bigger circles that you see on the screen, those are bubbles. So I'm not really looking at that, but what I'm looking at is this football-shaped dark region in the center of the screen. I think there's actually 2 whipworm eggs right there. And these are literally the only 2 eggs that I can really tell are here at all on both of these slides. There was a couple other potential eggs that I could consider were eggs, and as I get better at doing this, I'm going to be a lot more sure. But what I do know is I've only got less than a handful of eggs on the whole slide and 1 worm, which according to my calculations, you know, means that she does have a very, very low worm load, which makes me really happy. That is kind of expected this time of year, but I really want to get to know this type of equipment. I really want to get to know this process before I really need it, before I have a sick goat. So for reference, what I'm using is this parasite control plan binder that I got from Delcy with a Life of Heritage. I'll link this binder as well as the general goat health binder that Delcy has in the description box. I love her resources. Delcy has put a lot of work not only into her YouTube channel, which is called A Life of Heritage, but into her resources. These are hands-on, very valuable tools that I use all the time. And so I've been going through her binder and kind of looking at my slide while cross-referencing this common parasite egg sheet. And this is where I've decided that this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a whipworm on Christine's fecals, but only 2 eggs, so she does not have a heavy worm load at all. But it will be kind of cool to compare what I'm seeing here now versus what I might see in a month or 2 when spring actually hits and the real worm season actually hits. We're not quite there yet, but it is starting to get warmer outside. So I'm supposed to add together the number of eggs that I see and multiply by 50 to get the eggs per gram number. So I definitely saw 2, possibly saw 4. I'm going to err on the side of caution and assume that I saw 4 eggs. 4 times 50 is 200. And according to the book, a fecal egg count below 500 isn't usually an issue, so deworming may not be needed. So, good. I am by no means a pro at this. I was very pleasantly surprised how inexpensive this really nice microscope was. When I was first researching how to do my own fecals, I learned that I need a microscope where the ocular piece here has a 10 times magnification and the little magnifying piece at the bottom that looks at the slide, that part also had to be 10 times. So basically I'd have 100 times magnification when looking for eggs. So this microscope has that, plus it has the ability to, you know, project to the computer screen. I don't think, you know, any person who doesn't have a YouTube channel or maybe a class of homeschool kids at their house really needs something like that. But this microscope was only $189. And this set of McMaster slides was $65. And it sounds like a lot, okay? It is a lot of money. But the amount of money that I won't be spending on either the vet or dewormers that I don't necessarily need and I'm giving just because I'm assuming that that's what works in my area, the amount of money that I will be saving this year is going to more than pay for this equipment, which is really, really awesome. I'll link in the description box where I got all of these things, and of course Delcy's parasite binder as well as her regular goat health binder. Check those things out. Sometimes keeping goats seems a little bit intimidating. There's a lot of, you know, talk out there about how goats are so hard to keep. I think doing your own fecals, it seems super scary and it seems super technical, but take my word for it, it's really not. You just get the tools needed, you get the book that's gonna hold your hand and guide you through step by step, and you just do the processes as written, and you really can get the confidence as you keep doing things in order to manage your herds more efficiently and more intently from home.